The woods are supposed to feel peaceful when you're alone. But on my Thanksgiving drive from Colorado to New Hampshire in 2014, I learned the truth. The quietest places are the ones where someone can watch you the longest without you even knowing it. My name is Eric, and I've always preferred solo truck camping over hotels. I've spent years setting up my rig exactly how I like it. A platform, bed in the back, storage drawers for gear, a small cook setup, and everything dialed in so I can pull off just about anywhere and have a comfortable night. For me, camping wasn't about saving money, it was about freedom. And up until this trip, I had never once felt unsafe doing it. But somewhere in Iowa, on the fourth night of my drive, that changed. I picked a small clearing off a service road I'd used before. I got my fire going, set up my sleeping area in the truck bed, and was settling into the familiar quiet when a pair of headlights slipped through the trees. A dark sedan rolled into the clearing and stopped directly across from my campsite, pointing its light straight at me. The engine stayed running, the beams locked onto me like the driver was inspecting every detail. No movement, no window rolling down. Just that silent stare of bright headlights cutting through the smoke from my fire. The moment I stood up to walk toward them, the vehicle backed up and drifted away down the road, as if the driver had been waiting for me to react. I thought it was weird, but shrugged it off. Maybe they were planning on camping here but changed their mind when they seen me already set up. Who knows? 2 nights later, after hundreds more miles, I reached a small lakeside turnout near the Great Lakes, a place I'd camped at a few times before. It was always peaceful there, the sound of water, the open sky, the soft crunch of sand under the tires. But when my headlights swept across the clearing, I froze. The same dark sedan was already parked at the far end of the site. It sat at an odd angle, tucked near the trees, windows completely dark. I waited to see if anyone stepped out, but the car looked untouched. The ground around it didn't show movement, and the air was still. There was no tent, no fishing gear, no signs of life anywhere near it. The thought of leaving crossed my mind, but exhaustion won, so I stayed. The night remained completely silent, unnervingly so, and I slept uneasily in the back of my truck. When I woke up before sunrise, the sedan was gone. But the clearing didn't look the way I left it. The ground around my truck was covered in footprints, more than I could count. They wrapped around my vehicle in overlapping circles, like someone had spent hours walking slow, careful laps around where I slept. The patterns were so repetitive they had carved shallow tracks into the dirt. Every door handle on my truck had a faint smear across it, the kind you'd leave if you slowly tested each one with your palm. When I wiped the condensation off my windshield, I noticed a folded piece of paper tucked beneath the wiper. Inside were 3 words written in shaky handwriting that said, "I like you." The realization hit me so hard it made my knees go weak. Someone had been watching me all night, only a few feet away, patiently circling my truck while I slept. By the time I reached Vermont the following evening, the fear had settled deep in my chest. I chose a simple pull-off, nothing special, just a break in the woods where I could rest before the last stretch. I was too uneasy to sit outside, so I cooked a quick dinner and brought the food into the cab to eat with the doors locked and the windows up. When I turned on the dome light, I instinctively looked out the windshield. A figure was standing at the tree line, motionless, facing directly toward my truck. They didn't turn away. They didn't pretend they were just passing through. They simply stood there, fixed in place, as if they had been watching long before I noticed. My body reacted before my mind could. I threw everything into the passenger seat, started the engine, and tore out of that pull-off without looking back. The forest whipped past in a blur, and I didn't slow down until the next afternoon when I arrived at my parents' home in New Hampshire. When I told my dad what happened, the sedan, the footprints, the handprints on the doors, and the figure standing in the dark, he didn't dismiss it. Instead, he went into the attic and returned with a dusty box filled with old newspaper clippings. They were stories from the 1950s about a serial killer who stalked campers along remote road pull-offs across the Northeast. He never attacked in towns or cities, never targeted groups, and never spoke to his victims. He only hunted people who camped alone. What made the articles truly disturbing was the detail my dad pointed out at the bottom of each one. Every scene had the same note left near the body, written in a shaky hand with almost childlike lettering. The note always ended with the same 3 words: "I like you." The handwriting in the old photos was nearly identical to the note left on my windshield. The shape of the letters, the uneven spacing, even the little marks beneath the lines, all of it matched so closely it made my skin crawl. The man who wrote those original notes would be long dead today, which means someone else is out there copying him, studying him, continuing his ritual along the same lonely roads where he hunted 70 years ago. And during my drive that year, that person chose me. I haven't truck camped alone since that trip. And whenever I pass a quiet pull-off at night, I still wonder if someone is standing just beyond the tree line, watching the way they watched me, slowly circling, quietly testing doors, leaving notes in handwriting that hasn't changed since 1954. Our next story is about someone who thought they were having nightmares, but in reality, someone loved to watch them in their sleep. This happened to a woman named Lauren in the winter of 2022. She lived alone in a small rental house on the edge of Portland, surrounded by woods and long, empty streets. Work had been draining her, late nights, heavy schedules, constant exhaustion. By the time she crawled into bed each night, her mind felt muddy and unfocused. So when the first strange moment happened, she didn't trust her own eyes. Around 3 a.m., she woke up with her heart racing for no clear reason. As her eyes adjusted, she noticed a shape outside her bedroom window, a faint outline of a bearded man standing just beyond the glass. He didn't move, didn't knock. He simply stood far enough back that only the edges of his face caught the moonlight. When she blinked, he was gone. Half asleep, she convinced herself it was nothing more than a dream. But the next night, she woke again. The air felt wrong, heavy, as if the room had shifted. When she looked toward her bedroom doorway, she saw a tall silhouette standing in the hallway, a bearded man with broad shoulders, watching from the shadows. Her groggy mind blurred reality and dream together, and eventually she drifted back to sleep, telling herself it was stress, exhaustion, or imagination. Anything but real. The third night removed all doubt. Near 4 a.m., she woke with that same crushing sense of not being alone. The room was cold, unnaturally still. Her eyes moved to the closet. The door was open, just slightly, just enough to show a sliver of darkness inside. And in that darkness, she saw him. The outline of a man standing between her hanging clothes, head tilted, beard barely visible in the dim light. He didn't move when she looked at him. He simply stood there, calm and silent, as if he had been watching her sleep for hours. When she finally blinked, the closet was empty, but the door was still open. The next morning, she found proof that shattered any hope that these were nightmares. Inside the closet, the dust on the wooden floor held clear footprints, large, bare footprints, starting in the back corner and leading out toward her bed. They circled the foot of it, paused, and then returned quietly into the closet. Someone had been inside her house, walking inches from where she slept, night after night. Before she left that morning, she heard faint movement inside the walls, slow scraping, soft shifting, as if someone was retreating deeper into the house's structure. She walked out the front door and never stepped back inside again, because she finally understood the truth. She had never been dreaming. Someone had been watching her, patiently, quietly, every night. Our next story is about a man who didn't realize he was being watched until the pictures on his wall started moving on their own. and the truth behind it was far worse than anything he imagined. This happened to a man named Marcus in 2019 after he moved into a small second-floor apartment just outside Chicago. The place was old but comfortable, the kind of rental with squeaky floors, thin walls, and outdated carpeting. It wasn't perfect, but it was close to work, and he liked the quiet. The previous tenant had left a few wooden picture frames nailed to the walls. Marcus filled them with random photos he printed himself. Things that made the empty rooms feel like home. For a while, everything felt normal. During his second week, Marcus started noticing small changes. A photo on the wall would be crooked in the morning. Another picture would be turned slightly the next day. At first, he assumed it was just loose nails or vibrations from the upstairs neighbors, but he couldn't shake the uneasy feeling that someone had touched them. There was dust on the top edges of every frame, except for the one that had moved each night. The clean spot looked like it had been gripped by fingers. One morning, Marcus woke to find not one frame out of place, but all of them. Each photo had been rotated at the exact same angle, perfectly aligned, as if someone had carefully adjusted them while he slept. Nothing else in the apartment had been disturbed, just the pictures. Marcus realized someone with time and patience was doing this, someone who wanted him to notice. The fear settled deeper when it kept happening night after night, even after he double-checked his locks. Marcus finally bought a cheap adhesive door camera and placed it facing the hallway. That night, he straightened all the photos, locked up, and went to bed early. The next morning, the frames had shifted again, but differently this time, moved downward by exactly the same amount. When Marcus checked the camera, there was just one motion alert at 3:41 a.m. The footage showed a dark, empty hallway until the lights flickered. For one brief second, a tall man in a hood stood directly in front of Marcus's door, leaning in toward the peephole as if listening. When the lights flickered a second time, he was gone. Marcus called the landlord, who agreed to check the walls. When they removed the first picture frame, they found a narrow hole carved straight into the plaster, just big enough for an eye to see through. Every frame in the apartment hid another hole behind it, all connecting to the same dark cavity inside the wall. Someone thin enough to crawl, patient enough to stay quiet, had been watching Marcus from those holes for days, maybe weeks, carefully adjusting the frames just to let him know. The police searched the walls and the crawl spaces behind them. The man who had been watching Marcus was gone. But in the darkness behind one of the frames, they found a small pile of Polaroid photos, dozens of them, showing Marcus asleep in bed, taken from inside the wall cavity. Fresh fingerprints covered the area, all belonging to someone who had never been caught. Marcus moved out that same day, and the man behind the walls was never found.